Tall order this one, GCSE Warfare Through Time. We're looking at the Iraq War 2003. Bit of a narrative again at times, but remember you're looking for examples of change in modern warfare that you can give to support your answers to the examiner. So if we just rewind history a little bit to 1990, and in 1990 the Iraqi president Saddam Hussein invaded and occupied Kuwait in the Middle East. A coalition was formed led by the Americans that intervened and forced Hussein to withdraw from Kuwait. This was in 1991. Fast forward 12 years later, we're in 2003, and there are worries that Saddam Hussein is manufacturing weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, perhaps chemical weapons. He's perhaps playing a part in international terrorist attacks as well. So therefore, a US-led coalition, backed by Britain largely, pressed ahead with a full invasion of Iraq to stop this once and for all in 2003. Of course, a lot of these allegations made against Saddam were proven to be false at a later date, which makes this a very controversial war. It's also controversial because though the war was a successful one in terms of it succeeding in its objectives to defeat Iraq and to get Saddam out, this victory did mark the start of a long and bitter insurgency movement, a campaign of guerrilla warfare, which had a devastating effect on the civilian population and on international opinion. And by 2010, coalition forces, American and British forces, had completely withdrawn from Iraq. So, if we go back to 2003, reasons why the American-led coalition troops were successful in the war against Saddam Hussein was largely because of their technological advantage in weapons and communications technology. Coalition jet planes used shock and awe tactics of bombing strategic Iraqi targets, often with smart bombs and missiles. And then the follow-on invasion saw 200,000 ground troops move into Iraq, proving overwhelming for the Iraqi soldiers. There were aircraft used, helicopters, mobile artillery, tanks. Advanced communications called on assistance from jets within minutes, and these aircraft would arrive with anti-tank missiles, rockets, bombs, cannons that could produce a rate of fire of about 60 rounds a second. Drones were used for reconnaissance, satellites intercepted enemy transmissions and guided bombs to precise targets. The British used their Challenger tanks, which had laser-assisted guns. They could fire 8 shells every minute. So it's perhaps not surprising that Saddam's forces were defeated within 3 weeks. Saddam himself was arrested, tried and executed for his crimes. So, in spite of this dramatic victory, the situation inside Iraq deteriorated just as quickly as Saddam Hussein's government dissolved, the country suffering already from a very weak infrastructure, badly damaged by the war, turned into chaos, really. Civilian anger turned on the occupying forces, on the British and Americans, and suddenly you get a guerrilla insurgency movement commencing, where soldiers, insurgency soldiers, hidden in the cities amongst the local population, used typical guerrilla warfare tactics such as hit and run, suicide attacks, car bombs, improvised explosive devices, IEDs, to attack their enemy. And Iraq was plunged into turmoil. The casualties and pictures from the war reports caused increasing opposition across the globe and back at home. Public attitudes towards the war changed. And accounts also of abuse by coalition forces added to the growing unpopularity of the conflict. And eventually, there was enough political pressure to force a gradual withdrawal. And as we said earlier, coalition forces had disappeared from Iraq by 2010. Now, overall, the Iraq War illustrates a number of things about modern warfare in the new century. First, it shows you the way that science and technology has revolutionised warfare since 1900. 2, it proves that insurgency and guerrilla warfare could be used effectively against superior forces to gradually wear down their will to continue fighting. 3, It again illustrates the importance of public opinion and keeping the public on your side if a campaign is to be prosecuted to a long-term successful outcome. So the Iraq War 2003 is something that you can use to underline, to highlight, to illustrate some of the significant changes in warfare through the course of the 20th century.